have a business. And with YouTube, you can open your door to half the world's internet users, while only connecting with the viewers most interested in you. It's a destination for what?
Yo, Happy New Year's, yo. What's good, what's good, what's good? So it is, less than 24 hours. Be motherfucking 2020. No, your uncle ain't never hit me up, man. But it's all good, you know.
You have a business. And with YouTube,
Artists
you can
are
open
very
your door to
busy
half
people.
the world's internet users, while only connecting with the viewers most.
Final countdown, bro. The last few hours. The last few hours of a whole motherfucking year. We getting down to the nitty gritty.
snowed in this winter. Here are some quick fixes to keep your snowblower running smooth all winter long. Spark plug. Cleaning a dirty spot.
Working on a project for Black History Month. It's going to be a interactive art installation for the kids, and it's basically almost done. Just got to finish up some drawing on here. Really? Oh yeah, this is a good way to start the day, man. Some art education, some herbal essence, some good ass fucking music. Bruh, I be living a fucking dream over here. Living a motherfucking dream, bro.
How's it going? Ever heard about this game called League of Legends? Well, you're hearing about it now. Check it out. Each game you get put into a team of...
Gotta let that hair down. Oh. I'm feeling so terrific. I roll a split, but then I lit it. I hit it, now I'm lifted. Ooh, I'm really feeling gifted. Ooh. Yeah, it's two of them. That right there is a self-portrait, and this one here is a self-portrait. And I'm gonna do one more. I paint myself all the time, yo. Yeah, I paint myself all the time. Shit. Shit kinda strong this morning. Fuck. I'm still hit that shit again though. Fuck it. Boy, I hate coughing, boy. I be trying to get away without coughing off that shit. Minute, yeah. And she want me when I'm in it, yeah. Every time I hit it, she say she love it when I'm in it. Oh, oh, oh. And that shit getting wet, wet, wet. Yeah, yeah. That shit go splat, splat, splat. Yeah, yeah. She love me when I'm in it. Oh, she love it when I hit it. Yeah. She love it when I hit it. And she love me when I'm in it. That shit wet, wet, wet. And it goes splat, splat, splat. Yeah, yeah. Cause she love it when I hit it. She love it when I'm in it. That shit wet, wet, wet. That shit goes splat, splat, splat.
Everyone back home is this, with a little help from Google Fi, a phone plan by Google.
The results strongly support that these beings are not closely related to any
Or not closely related to anything we know. And she love me when I'm in it. Damn, somebody need to make that song, yo. Somebody needs to make that song. Splat. I made that pussy go splat, splat, splat. You know what I'm saying? Alright, I got that. Got my pencils. Do I need a sharpener? I can plug up the sharpener if I want to, but let me see. bam 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 bam. Dun 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 dun. An estimation of how many paintings I've completed. So I've been painting for 10 years. And I do about 10 paintings a year on average. Some years I do more paintings than others. I remember one year I did like 15 or 16 paintings in one year. Plus drawings and things like that. So I say I've really been doing this for like I've been an artist my entire life. I've been making art forever, but like really like trying to make good paintings, I've only been doing that for the past 10 years. So I would say I probably did like 120 paintings, 130 paintings. Or something like that. Some of them unfinished. Or mostly finished, or even some of them I didn't really like because they were commissioned pieces, but I've done well over 100, yo. Yeah, I got like 40 of them here in the house with me. You don't even know, man. Like my house, I swear I got like 40 paintings in my house, at least 40. This shit is fucking packed full of art, yo. Oh yeah, bro, I put that work in, homie. Every time you see me, where I be at? In the studio. Now I play a lot of video games too, but I try to stay in the studio more than I play video games, you know. I ain't gonna be remembered for my video game skills. How many kills I got on Apex Legends, ain't nobody gonna ever remember me for that shit. You know, this art shit though, niggas might be talking about me in the, 50 years, 100 years after I'm dead, yo. Motherfuckers still might have my name in their mouth. You know what I'm saying? Trying to discuss some of these complex ideas and concepts that I tried to put into a visual representation to start a, simple conversations, but meaningful. Like real conversations. Let's not always talk about the bullshit, man. Let's talk about some real shit. Everybody talks about the bullshit. We're tired of it. I'm done. Can we talk about some real shit? Can my art help lead to some real conversations? That's all I want. If I can keep motherfuckers talking about some real shit for the next 100 years, I'm satisfied with that.
Well, we didn't get it right the last time, but hindsight is 20/20. Happy holidays. I'm Mike Bloomberg, and I approve this message.
Really, Mike? You wouldn't let me skip that shit, Michael Bloomberg? Who gives a fuck about your campaign? You give a fuck about your campaign? I hate fucking rulers, but I hate straight lines even more. They tell me and my shit real. Only show just how I feel. Ain't jumping on no bandwagon. Ain't out here trying to flave wagon. I don't follow no trends or jump on waves. I do my own thing. That's why they remember me. Hey. Trying to do my own thing.
You have a business. And with YouTube, you can open
You
your door to half
have
the
a
world's internet
business.
users, while only connecting with the viewers most.
Okay. I've done comic books before.
The lips of truth are never closed. The head of truth is upright.
Bum 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 bum. Hey. Yeah. Cause if you don't know, then you might be a nigga. Go figure. Just go figure. I make gold figures like gold figures and whole niggas. You's a whole nigga. What's your dough, nigga? That's for sure, nigga. You really ain't pimpin', You nigga just spendin', Tryna buy them bitches, I don't buy no female, man. That shit ain't for retail. That shit ain't for resale. EFA. Spin on the ginger rap. That's how we keep it open. Motion, not to mention going through the motion, They call me magic like hocus pocus and yeah, I'm blowing on the doja like man. My niggas we stay too focused, They going ham like the whole ocean and the whole emotion, get the whole focus. Get the whole focus. Crack it back and bend you over like it's scoliosis. Boom, 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 boom. I finished watching The Irishman last night. People say the movie is long as hell, and it is. It took me like 4 times to finish it because I kept falling asleep because that shit is so fucking long. And it's like it's that subtle action. It's like there's some action in that shit, but it's not like, I don't know. It's weird how they played that shit out, yo. It's like it's a good movie though. I ain't gonna lie, yo. And it got the fucking it's all the old heads, all the old head gangster motherfuckers in that shit, yo. Motherfuckers who always pretended to be gangster in their whole career, yo. But they just regular dudes. They just play good ass gangsters though. Yeah, watch The Irishman, yo. Just know, like, if you fall asleep or if you feel like taking a nap, it's okay, because this shit is fucking long as hell.
Expensive piece of toilet paper that one can buy. These are the best years of.
It is a long movie. After that shit, I started researching the real motherfuckers. Oh, my dreads. Oh, my hair's so long. That shit fucking up the screen, yo. Damn, dreads. That boy got them locks in the way. Hold up now. Black Mass. I think you told me that shit too, yo. I'm gonna have to watch that. I don't know, Black Mass, that shit just sound like some sci-fi shit. I don't know, that shit sound like some crazy ass Black Mass. Black Massachusetts. Johnny Depp, one of my favorite actors all the way since, yo, was that ink too wet? Did I just really fuck that shit up? Oh my god, I smush it real bad. Yeah, ever since motherfucking 21 Jump Street. Y'all ain't old enough to remember that shit. I don't give a damn, bro. You know what I'm saying? Who remember 21 Jump Street? I remember that shit when it was new episodes, you know what I'm saying? That's how old I am, yo. I remember motherfucking New York Undercover when that shit was new episodes, yo. Huh? Y'all ain't old enough to remember that shit, yo. New York Undercover? Y'all don't remember that shit, man? Goddamn 21 Jump Street. You ain't old enough to remember 21 Jump Street. Yeah, Johnny Depp, he the shit, yo. I'm going to the bathroom real quick, guys.
by Google.
Anything on your computer, you need to get Grammarly.
I write pretty much all day.
Alright. We doing art. I do art in the morning, crack it dawning, getting up yawning, sharpening my pencils, cleaning up my brushes. Fuck that, I'm an artist. End of discussion. And I start out in the studio. You know how I do it, yo. Gotta get in my pad when I step in the lad, and man, I feel glad when I got utensils in my hands. I'm drawing, I'm sketching, man. I'm trying to get this portrait in the proper proportions, cause the eyes are a certain width from the nose and The nose is a certain lift, and the head is a certain height, so the body is 7 times that. I gotta get it right. If you know the dimensions, then you can flex a human when you get it in perspective. So the ears are at the top of the eye and the base of the nose, in between the nose and the lip. So your ear is here. And however tall your head is, your body is normally 7 heads. And that's how you draw people. Now everybody owe me $5 for that tutorial. You can send it to my PayPal account, to my Patreon channel, where you can log on and support me monthly for a fee of $1. Better do some more pencil real quick. Yeah, I feel you.
Google Fi, a phone plan by Google. If a winter traveler made a phone plan, he could share all of this with everyone back home in this. Get high-speed data abroad at no extra charge with a little help from Google Fi.
what really happened in Roswell 6 years ago.
To uncover the truth, I've got to get to the bottom.
Ready to go. Happy New Year, bro. Happy New Year. But it's mighty funny that the new year starts in the winter. A new year should start in the summer when we got the new flowers and new weather. I still wonder, what are we under this new spell, and can it change anything? Oh well, I guess we can never really tell unless we do the research for ourselves. Yeah, and it's a happy new year. 2020, it's almost here, and I got 2020 and vision, see it clear, and I got 2020, I blow it in the air. If you know what I mean, then you really don't care. Cause we probably share the same ideas, the same hope and dreams, and the same fucking schemes, cause we come from the same hood. Ooh. I'm choking on my spit, but fuck that, I still represent. Damn. Somebody give me the Heimlich over here. What the hell? That was some serious shit just now. Boom, 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 boom. Cause you know that time damage you. Everybody getting older when you flip the calendar. The handle you. Ooh, don't let old man time try handle you. I need to start back writing. I say that shit every time I freestyle, man. But I be having some super duper thoughts. You know what I'm saying? Alright, they might be mediocre at best, but hey, I still have them. When most motherfuckers don't have thoughts at all. You know? Cause some niggas don't think, and that shit really stank. Trying to claim general, really jump in the rank. See, just little shit like that. Who can see? I can do like some simple shit on freestyle. Give me a couple hours in a pen and a pad. Let me write some shit down. Ooh, boy, I might get back at it. And there's no substitution for this new revolution. The path that you choosing. Who were you abusing? Really? Oh, you will not let me skip this one? Then I shall turn the volume down. I'll just silence you either way, bro. Fuck your commercial. Google Fi. I'm Googleable. Did y'all know that, yo? Y'all can Google me on some real shit, yo. Google my shit, yo, and I pop up like bam, bitch. That's kind of scary though. Like, who the fuck put all that together? Just, does the Google algorithm just like, okay, we know who you are, Travis. I'm gonna make a profile on you, bitch. You can never hide now. You can never do anything because we know who you are. I've been good, yo. Chilling. I cannot complain, yo. I had a bunch of vacation time saved up, so haven't worked for almost 2 weeks. Been sitting here working on some art, yo. That's all. Actually got some colored pencils. I'm doing drawings and stuff this morning. Some simple panel drawings, but I'm doing some drawing this shit. I was showing off. Somebody was like, I've never seen you draw before, so I showed off like the drawings I did of you. Showed my little sketch pad off. But this is like I said, this is for that kids exhibit. And so it doesn't need to be really detailed or anything, just like some basic cartoon stuff, just to get the point across. This is a burning house. The house is on fire. Somebody needs to be saved. It's simple. It's easily visually read. You get the idea. That's all I was going for. Is like, you get the idea, right? All right, we're good. But I'm still having fun with this. I like doing stuff like this. Something different. I actually watched this one dude yesterday, yo. I don't know. I listen to a lot of art tutorials and a lot of drawing tutorials and shit just because I find that shit interesting. And I never went to fucking school for this stuff. So anyone who is proficient at art and they're doing pretty well in life at art, I'll definitely listen to them, especially if I like their style or their technique. And yo, I came across this dude yesterday, yo, and I do the same thing a lot too, yo. And he was just he said the title of the YouTube clip was Professional Artists Colors and Coloring Book. And I'm like, yo, I be doing that shit, son. Like, I get some, when I be at work, yo, I get some colored pencils and like, but you can make a coloring book look good, yo. Like, that's all this is. I just made a panel in like a coloring book style fucking drawing, yo. But if you want to, you can hype this shit up, really, for real, yo. And so I be doing that. So I was like, yo, let me see somebody else do this shit. I ain't never seen nobody make a video about, professional artists coloring. Yo, this motherfucker colored this picture of the Joker, yo. But he did something I ain't never do, yo. He added more lines to the fucking, to the comic, to the coloring book page himself. He got his pen out and added, and like even added more details to the fucking drawing. But he colored that shit with these markers, like these paint markers. Oh my god. And then he drew like some mad other shit all around it, yo. I was like, yo, this motherfucker was that shit was too hot, yo. I watched like 2 or 3 of his damn drawings. He did a couple of Dragon Ball Z coloring books. But that Joker shit he did, yo, that shit was fucking super fucking hot, yo. Now he makes me want to try some shit like that when I'm bored at work or whatever. Just pull out my little fucking coloring book, cause I got a Paw Patrol's coloring book, and so yeah, I might actually try to hype that shit up on some other shit, yo. I thought I was gonna be able to pay myself for doing this project right here, but I'm not going to be able to. So, it is what it is. I thought about not finishing it, honestly, but I'm gonna just finish it. Because like I said, it's really simple and it's almost done anyway. And it's for the kids. So, it's like, dang, I thought I was gonna get like a couple bucks for doing this shit though. Maybe next time. Where is my other pencil? This pencil. If this shit weren't for the kids, y'all already know, man. I ain't gonna lie. This project wouldn't be getting finished. Word up. Hey, I'm trying, yo. I'll be practicing, yo. I'm getting better. I am getting better. I actually drew this whole panel with no fire in it. I forgot to do that. I don't know why. I didn't put fire here. Because the house is supposed to be on fire, but so the fuck what? Now I don't know what the fuck I do. Because I didn't draw fire on it. If I could just add fire like that, I guess. Maybe. We have no choice, people. the best I can do. We don't make mistakes, man. We have happy accidents. You paint a tree, I paint a tree. Look at all this happiness. We don't make mistakes, man. We have happy accidents. You paint a tree, I paint a tree. Look at all this happiness. Oh, look at all this happiness. You paint a tree, I paint a tree. Look at all this happiness. We just mistakes, man. We have happy accidents. We don't make mistakes. We have happy accidents. You can paint a tree here. You can paint a tree here. Look at all this happiness. Oh, you paint a tree, I paint a tree. Look at all this happiness. Oh, you paint a tree, I paint a tree. That's a happy accident. That's a happy accident. You paint a tree, I paint a tree. Look at all this happiness. And that's a happy accident. We don't make mistakes. We have happy accidents. You paint a tree, I paint a tree. Look at all this happiness. We don't make mistakes. We have happy accidents. We don't make mistakes. We have happy accidents. Yo, I'll let you later on, yo. You paint a tree, I paint a tree. Fuck this line. We have happy accidents. You paint a tree, I paint a tree. Look at all this happiness. You guys ever seen Schindler's List? In that movie, it was a black and white movie, but there was like one or two things in color. One of the things that was in color was the flame on the candles, and then another thing that was in color was the jacket of this little girl. She was wearing this red jacket, and of course the flame was red and orange, but trying to pull out that fucking Schindler's List type feeling with everything black and white except the fire. The fire has color to it. Never mind, I'm getting too allegorical here.
Season 2 of Impulse premieres. Catch up on all of Season 1 from the beginning. For free.
Yeah, if you guys never watched that show either, Impulse, it's a YouTube original TV show, Impulse. That shit is pretty good, yo. It's like some sci-fi shit. Motherfuckers got teleportation powers and shit.
Season 1 now streaming free.
Urban Nerd Beast.
live on YouTube. It's the 9th Annual Streamy Awards. Streaming live only on YouTube.
Urban Nerd Beast.
What to do, bro?
Urban Nerd Beast.
Purchase your tracks today.
Season 1 now streaming free.
This guy.
That's it, bro. you just cut on to that?
Got a quality product. Now running the show again.
We will bring the fullest force of the law down upon you. What the hell?
I missed, didn't I?
Okay. I'm coming, guys. I'm coming. I'm coming. Hold on, 1 second. Un momento. I should have brought me up a fucking. Damn it, man. Let me go. Let me grab a snack real quick. Just grab a snack. I'll be right back.
Purchase your tracks today. Purchase your tracks today.
According to the International Organization for Standardization, Monday is the first day of the week. The name Monday.
Damn, just a 6-pack of Sprite, some Mountain Dew, something. It don't even have to be like a brown soda like Coca-Cola or Mr. Pip. Can I just have a soft drink, please? I need the sugar, the carbonation, the high fructose corn syrup, the aspartame. You know, I need all of that. But hey, then I just bring me in a water and some gluten-free Kind bars, yo. Dark chocolate, almond and sea salt. These are good snacks. These are healthy snacks. Soda, just the sugar level in soda, you're looking at kidney problems in the future for too much absorption of soda, bad teeth, bad breath, especially when you start going through puberty. You drink a lot of sodas with all these chemicals really in these dyes and colorings, and it just messes up your skin, and you wonder why you have acne and mood swings and all this stuff. It's just drinking too much soda, yo. And soda dangerous, yo. You know what I'm saying? Water is where it's at. But once you start on that soda, it be so hard to get off that stuff, yo. That shit, it's like a drug. Soda is like a drug. You know what I'm saying? Some nuts, some fruits and berries, water. These are healthy snacks, man. Them almonds and pecans keep your skin looking shiny and glowing. Keep your hair looking shiny and glowing and strong. I like having carrots for snacks. Just a handful of carrots. Delicious. Some cold broccoli. You know, that's because some people enjoy living, and if you really enjoy to live, if you really like being alive, you'll do things that make you stay alive longer. You know, this life thing is kind of good. I'm gonna try to make this last as long as I can. Oh, some celery. Ooh. See, I make ants on the log. You ever had that? Get you some celery, slap you some peanut butter in that little groove, and plop you some raisins on that shit. And bite that shit down like that, yo. Little ants on the log. Delicious. I love raisins. Sometimes what I eat instead of cereal, get a bowl of applesauce and sprinkle you some like some craisins or some dried cherries or some golden raisins or something. A bowl of applesauce, right? And sprinkle you some dry berries in there, yo. I love my shit with craisins, but I'll go with cherries too, yo. Even the little red cherries, I can't think of what them shits called. I'll put them shits in a bowl of fucking applesauce. Delicious. I'll be 39 this year. And I'm pretty sure I can tell people I'm 29 and get away with that shit. I played it last night for the first time because it was free, yo. I downloaded that shit yesterday. And I download Star Trek Online. And, oh yeah, I think those are the only two I download. Yeah, but I got that cuisine round. I played one round of that shit. I set my character up, jumped into the map and shit. Motherfucker running around with some goddamn underwear on. I'm like, damn, you ain't got no gear, nigga. I went around, yo. I pick up a goddamn strainer for like straining shit, you know, like vegetables or pasta. This motherfucker pick up a strainer, put that shit on his shoulder for a shoulder pad. I said, God damn. I found a couple weapons. Then I'm in the house. Looking for some more shit. I'm finding gold and shit. Then I hear a door close. I'm like, yo, somebody just came in this fucking house with me. Walking around, trying to find another player in this bitch. Look out the window. This motherfucker gun butt me in the back of the head. Killed my ass. I was like, well. Turn that shit off right then. I'll come back to it later. Yo. I played Star Trek for like 2 hours last night. I streamed it for a little while. I streamed that shit, yo. I got in some got in a space battle with the fucking Klingons. You know what I'm saying? Out there with my photon cannons. Pew, pew, shooting the hell out these motherfuckers, yo. Then we got stuck. No. I was supposed to go to some other place after that. I did play that shit for a minute last night, though.
From Old English, literally meaning according to the International Organization for Standardization, Monday is the first day of the week. The name Monday is derived from Old English, literally meaning Moon's Day. Monday is dedicated to the moon. The name Tuesday derives from the Old English Tuesdag, which literally means Tuesday. Tu is the Old English form of the Norse god Tyr, the god of war and law. Tuesday is dedicated to Tyr. Tyr's Day.
Bro, if you want to get into the Battle Royale, I'm telling you, man, Apex Legends is where it's at. That shit, it's a free game. It's fun. And it's Respawn, so it's basically it's the Battle Royale version of Titanfall. Like Titanfall and Apex Legends are the same game. It's just two different modes of the same game. Like one mode is Team Deathmatch, the other mode is Battle Royale, and that's how it is. Like, I swear they're so fucking similar in playstyle. Like you can jump. If you've never played that shit, you can jump right into it and play it like if you've played Apex Legends before, or vice versa. Fuck, it's just right out of my reach.
The third day of the week is Wednesday, continued from the Middle English Wednesday, which is itself derived from the Old English Woden's Day. Woden was a Germanic god similar to the Norse god Odin. Eventually, Woden would become the head of the Germanic pantheon. Wednesday is Woden's Day. Thursday is the contemporary name for the fourth day of the week, which derives from the Old English that is translated as Thunor's Day. In Norse mythology, Thunor is known as Thor, the god of thunder. Thursday is dedicated to Thor, known as Thor's
Day. Thursday. Thor. Twig.
Friday
Tuesday.
comes from an Old English word, which means day of Frigg, a major goddess in Norse paganism. Frigg, also called Freya, was associated with love, and is equivocated with the Roman goddess of love, Venus. As a consequence, in cultures associated with the Roman and Norse pantheons, Friday is considered the day of love and love-making.
Get some booty on
According
Fridays.
with the previous traditions, the 6th day of the week, Saturday, is named directly after the Roman god Saturn. The Latin name for Saturday is Dies Saturni. Saturday, obviously, is Saturn's day. Sunday, the 7th day of the week, is derived from the Old English Sunnundag, literally translated as Sun's Day, which itself is from the Germanic interpretation of the Latin Dies Solis, Day of the Sun. Before we get to the names of the months explained, we must understand an important aspect of the ancient Roman calendar, and as a consequence, the calendar we use. Originally, there were only 10 months in the year, starting with March and ending on December. The period between December and March was considered a monthless period. Following the death of Romulus, the mythical founder of the Roman kingdom, his successor added January and February. This will play out in the last 4 months of the year. Also, the English names for the months of the year are all based on Latin or Greek names and words. In ancient Roman mythology, Janus is the god of beginnings, endings, and transitions, hence also of gates, doorways, and time. A two-faced god that looks to both the past and the future, the Romans dedicated and named the month of January to Janus. This month's birthstone is garnet and flower is the snowdrop. The English name February comes directly from the ancient Roman month Februarius, which itself is named for Februa, a Roman festival of ritual purification which occurred on the 13th through the 15th of the month.
Really? What the?
The festival would have been similar to modern spring cleaning. A later Roman god, Februus, would be named after and personify both the month and the festival. The birthstone of February is the amethyst, and the flower is the primrose. As already stated, the earliest Roman calendars began with the month which in modern English is March. In Latin, the month was called Martius, after the god of war Mars. The English version, March, also has meaning. As March was the first month of spring, it was the logical time to begin or resume military campaigns. So it could be said that the month of March is a good time to go on the march. This month's birthstone is aquamarine, and the flower is the daffodil. Okay, now for April. First, how the name is derived is uncertain, although there are two feasible explanations. The traditional origin for April is from the Latin aperire, which means to open. In the Mediterranean climate of the Roman civilization, April was the month during which many varieties of flowers bloom or open, hence the word aperire. The second possibility is that it is connected to the Roman goddess.
Sounds like aperture also, which is
goddess of
opening.
love, sex, and fertility, which would neatly coincide with the natural world's rebirth around this time. The connection linguistically is through Venus's Greek equivalent, who is Aphrodite, and we can see some similarity between April and Aphrodite. This month's birthstone is diamond, and the flower is the daisy. The Roman goddess of fertility, Bona Dea, was celebrated in what today in English is May. The Greek equivalent to Bona Dea was Maya, who was the goddess of motherhood and growth. The word Maya meant midwife in Greek, while in ancient Rome, the festival dedicated to Bona Dea was held in May. An alternate explanation provided by Ovid, an important Roman poet, claims May was named after Maoris, Latin for elders, and that the following month, June, is named for the Iuniores, Latin for juniors. So May is named for either the Greek and Roman goddess Maya, or for those considered to be elders. May's birthstone is the emerald, and the flower is the lily of the valley. There are two possible explanations for the source of the name for the month of June. First, it could be that June is named for the Latin word for junior, which is Iuniores. The other possibility is that June is named after the Roman goddess Juno, the wife of Jupiter, and the equivalent to the Greek goddess Hera. June's birthstone is the pearl, and the flower is the rose. The month of July is named after and honors Julius Caesar, who was born in July. Originally, the month was called Quintilis in Latin, since it was the 5th month of the older Roman calendar before January and February were added. Emperor Augustus changed the name of the month during his reign between 27 BCE and 14 of the Common Era. The birthstone of July is the ruby, and the flower is the larkspur. August was originally named Sextilis in Latin because it was the 6th month of the original 10-month Roman calendar. The first Roman emperor, Augustus, renamed the month to honor himself. He also chose this month because it was during this time when a series of major victories took place, including the conquest of Egypt. The birthstone for the month of August is onyx, and the flower is the poppy. September, October, November, and December are the easiest to explain. Once again, we must recall that the first Roman months, and this is reflected in how we today name months of the year. Is Latin for 7, octo is Latin for 8, nona is Latin for 9, deci is Latin for 10, which is where we also derive the word decimal. September was the 7th month of the original Roman calendar, October the 8th, November the 9th, and December the 10th. September's birthstone is the sapphire, and the flower is the morning glory. October's birthstone is the opal, and the flower is the calendula. November's birthstone is the topaz, and the flower is the chrysanthemum. December's birthstone is the blue turquoise, and the flower is the holly. Hopefully this has all made sense, and you have learned a little something about how we have derived the names of the days of the week and the months of the year. And I'll close by saying there is nothing whatsoever in astrology, so please give it up. Thank you. And now for the credits.
Has transformed the field of linguistics the way Dr. Chomsky has. A few decades ago, Dr. Chomsky's work in universal grammar ended a raging debate among linguists and psychologists over Chomsky versus Skinner. Dr. Chomsky's work proposes the existence of a language acquisition device, a black box that is universal to all humans. Dr. Chomsky's work in universal grammar and transformational grammar revolutionized the field of linguistics and opened the floodgate for new thoughts on language and cognition. But in spite of all the progress made in the last few decades, there are many questions remain unanswered or unknown to us. This morning, we have the pleasure to have America's #1 linguist to speak to us on questions such as how do we acquire the knowledge of language? What it means when we are able to speak and understand a language? How do we use this knowledge? What are the physical mechanisms involved in the representation, acquisition, and use of this knowledge? And what is there in this little black box? Dr. Chomsky is Institute Professor of MIT and Professor of Linguistics. He has been honored with many, many degrees and awards. He's a member of many professional and learned societies in the United States and abroad. Among them, he is a fellow of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences and the National Academy of Science. He is also a recipient of the Distinguished Scientific Contribution Award of the American Psychological Association. Dr. Chomsky has written many, many books and articles and spoken all over the world. Before we start, I would like to thank Winona State University, WSU Lyceum Series, and the Student Activity Committee for sponsoring this event. I would also like to thank the Minnesota Humanities Commission for its support. Thanks to Beckery and all who have worked so hard to make this dream a reality. And thank you, Dr. Chomsky, for coming all the way from Boston. Now, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome America's #1 linguist, Dr. Noam Chomsky.
This thing looks kind of like a presidential press conference or something like that. Hope you're not intimidated. The contemporary study of language, which was just described, is, from some points of view, a very ancient study. In fact, its roots lie in classical India and Greece 2,500 years ago. It's maybe the first branch of systematic human inquiry, maybe along with astronomy, and had many great achievements along the way. From another point of view, it's a rather young field. The major research enterprises that preoccupy people today were formulated in something like their contemporary form about 40 years ago, when lots of traditional ideas and insights and concerns were rediscovered. Rediscovered, incidentally, in total ignorance of the tradition, which had been completely forgotten and if even mentioned was mostly derided or dismissed with contempt. I remember that very well from my own student days at University of Pennsylvania and at Harvard. And in fact, it is now that the tradition is slowly being rediscovered and still largely unknown, it's turning out to be remarkably pertinent to contemporary concerns. So just to illustrate, the MIT Press, which publishes most of a lot of the technical work on linguistics and related fields, cognitive psychology and so on, has just published a book by a computational linguist on the structure of the lexicon, which derives quite self-consciously from Aristotelian roots. And in fact, modern universal grammar, or generative grammar, or whatever it's called, is actually has close resemblance to the work that was done 2,500 years ago in Indian grammar, which turns out to have been remarkably sophisticated. There is a completely new cast to a lot of these traditional questions, but there's also continuity, which it's well to bear in mind. The modern field, last 40 years or so, developed within the framework of what is sometimes called the cognitive revolution of the 1950s. Actually, it would be more proper, I think, to call it the second cognitive revolution, because in many ways it recapitulated and rediscovered insights and understanding that had been developed during what ought to be called the first cognitive revolution of the 17th century, which was part of the general scientific revolution from the Galilean revolution that radically transformed the way we think about the world. And one part of that was kind of a cognitive revolution associated mostly with Descartes. We read Descartes these days as a philosopher, but the distinction between philosophy and science didn't even exist until the mid-19th century. Philosophers were just scientists or historians or something like that. And Descartes essentially was a major contributor to the scientific revolution of the 17th century, and part of it was what we nowadays call as philosophy. The science, of course, has been superseded 300 years ago, so it's not called science anymore, but a lot of it hasn't been superseded and in fact is being rediscovered. Throughout the whole period of the study of language, long period, it's been intimately connected with the study of higher mental faculties, which is natural. Some language sometimes called a mirror of mind. It's distinctly human possession, which seems to be closely connected with other aspects of human cognition, higher mental faculties in general, what's sometimes called mind. And that was true during the first cognitive revolution as well, the Cartesian revolution. I think it's important to understand what that was all about. We, in many ways, the contemporary period, in my view, is a regression from that time. And in some ways, it's made progress, but what the issues, I think, are not well understood and are leading to quite a lot of confusion in contemporary work in philosophy of mind, philosophy of language, what's called cognitive science, and so on. So let's think for a moment about what actually happened. The modern scientific revolution, starting with Galileo, essentially, was aimed to construct a picture of the world that was mechanical, an idea that the world was a machine, a big, complicated machine made out of things like levers and gears and so on, which essentially could be constructed in principle by a master artisan. Of course, nobody's smart enough to do it, but it had that character. It's the kind of thing you could construct, like a huge clock or something like that. And in fact, it was assumed it was constructed by a super artisan, better than any human artisan. But it was a mechanical device. That was called the mechanical philosophy. But remember, philosophy just meant science, so it was essentially the science of mechanics. Descartes was a major figure in advancing and developing the mechanical philosophy, the conception of the world as a machine. The idea was, from roughly Galileo on, to overcome the mystical character of neoscholastic science, the reigning physics of the day, which held that the world was operated in terms of mystical forces. So if, say, a flower grows from a seed, that's because it has a vegetative force. And if something falls to the ground, it's because that's its natural place and where it wants to be. If two things attract each other, it's because they have a sympathy, and if they repel one another, they have an antipathy. And if I see a cube, let's say, rotating in space, it's because the physical cube, the form of the cube rotating in space, flits through the air in some fashion and gets into my brain. And in my brain, there's a cube rotating in space, so that's what I see. These are the kinds of conceptions of the physics of the day, the physics and physiology of the day. And the goal of the mechanical philosophy was to try to get rid of all that stuff and account for everything in terms of strictly mechanical principles that could be understood. Principles that we see when we see a machine, parts of a machine working, and try to show that the whole world works like that. Well, Descartes made a lot of progress in this. He extended the mechanical philosophy to, he thought he extended it to the biological world, to a good part of human nature. So, for example, probably his most lasting scientific contributions, the ones that can really be restated in somewhat different forms today, had to do with his theory of vision. So he and other scientists of the day mocked the idea that the form of an object flits through the air and gets into your mind. So it's pure mysticism. It's got to be a mechanical interchange of some kind. And he had a theory of light, which was mechanical, and recognized that the retinal image, what's on your retina, is not the cube rotating in space. Or let's say if I look at the audience, I see people sitting around and so on, but that's not the retinal image. The retinal image is some complicated two-dimensional display which could be interpreted in all sorts of ways. Descartes recognized that what you see must be a construction of the mind. It has to come from the inside, in the terms that were used by later philosophers working on this. The sensory organs just provide the occasion, or experience, which hits the sensory organs, provides the occasion for the mind to construct experience using its own internal resources, its own cognoscitive powers in terms of the day, which were understood to be innate. They had to be innate cognoscitive, hard to say it, powers, properties of the mind, which somehow use the occasion of sense to create what you see, a cube rotating in space, people walking down the street, people sitting in front of me, whatever it may be. It was also understood, as I say, that this was innate. So, for example, Descartes was struck by the fact, he didn't do the experiments, but if he did the experiments, they would come out the way he imagined. Even Galileo didn't do most of the famous experiments. He mostly imagined them. They're thought experiments. Some of them are physically impossible, in fact. Descartes did a thought experiment, which is undoubtedly correct. He asked, how is it that if you have an infant who's never seen a triangle, let's say, and you draw, suppose I were to draw a triangle on the blackboard, and the infant were to look at it, what the infant would perceive is a triangle. But in fact, what I drew is certainly not a triangle. I mean, it's some physical thing which couldn't possibly be a triangle. I mean, maybe two of the lines wouldn't quite come together, or one of them would be curved, or whatever. So why is it that the infant perceives a triangle, maybe a distorted triangle, and not a perfect image of exactly what it is? Why is that the case? And if you do experiments now, you find that is the case. Well, his conclusion was that it must be that the innate structure of the mind is based on principles like those of Euclidean geometry. And on the occasion of sense, the mind simply constructs a triangle, and whatever the sensory object is seen as some distortion of what the mind constructs. All of this is, and then he had theories of how the sensory image gets into the mind, which constructs those things, and so on, mechanical theories. which we wouldn't put in quite those terms today, but can be restated in modern terms without very dramatic change apart from the mechanisms. All of this is quite plausible, and in fact apparently true in a modern reformulation. And modern neurophysiology and perceptual psychology is giving sharper accounts which are roughly of that kind. Descartes pursued this as far as he could. He wanted to see how far you could go in giving a hypothetical account of the way the world could be a machine, up to things like human sensation and perception. And he concluded that you could go quite a long way, but that some things were left out. What was left out primarily was acts of human will, which he said are our most noblest possession, the only thing that's truly human. So there was a lot of interest in those days in automata, just as there is today. The automata at that time were complicated devices, that were made by master artisans and did all sorts of amazing things. And the question naturally arose, what's the difference between a human and an automaton, if there is any? And Descartes argued that this is precisely where the difference would lie. In fact, for him, it was the difference between humans and automata, and also between humans and animals, which were automata. The difference lay in acts of will. So in the case of a machine, an automaton, if you set its parts in a certain arrangement and you have some external input, the machine is compelled to act in a certain fashion, has no choice about the matter. It could be random, but it's either going to be random or determined. On the other hand, if you take a human being and its internal parts are arranged in a certain way and it has a certain sensory experience, it may be, as they put it, incited and inclined to act in a certain manner, but but it's not compelled to do so. It could act in a different manner. So if somebody were to walk up here with, an assault rifle or something and order everyone to stand up and say, Heil Hitler or something, and if you took him seriously, it's very probable that everybody would do it. You'd be incited and inclined to do it. But we all know that there is a choice. You might decide to get killed, let's say, because you don't want to do it. And those things are not determined. There's no mechanistic determination of that. If we know that as well as we know anything at all. And that is kind of irreducible, phenomenal knowledge, experience. And Descartes argued that that's the crucial difference between humans and animals. Incidentally, we have no reason to doubt that at the moment. Anyhow, that's the Cartesian argument. The most striking example that he offered was, in fact, language use. He pointed out that ordinary use of language, I don't mean writing poetry or anything, just talking to your friends at a bus stop or whatever, ordinary use of language has a kind of creative aspect. It's unbounded. People are always saying new things that were never heard before in their experience or maybe in human history. They don't know that they're new. There's no way of knowing whether a sentence that you just heard is one you've heard before. It's impossible. So ordinary human interchange with language is constantly innovative and productive and unbounded. In fact, it's infinite in a technical sense. On the other hand, it's also undetermined. So you can't determine what a person's going to say on the basis of the situation that they're in or the arrangement of their internal organs. On the other hand, it's not random. So it's not caused by situations or internal states, but it's somehow appropriate to situations. It's coherent. Other people understand it. It evokes thoughts in other people, which they could have expressed that way themselves if they had had the thought. And maybe they do have the thought after they hear the expression. So this collection of properties of being unbounded, undetermined, uncaused, but appropriate to situations, coherent, evoking thoughts in others, and so on. That's a kind of creative aspect of language use. And Descartes argued that that's the striking difference between humans and automata. There was a lot of interest in those days in trying to train in asking whether you could construct an automaton or train an animal or whatever to act the way a human does, and they most of the experiments turned on. They weren't actually carried out, but most experiments in that period, even in physics, weren't carried out. They were thought about. The experiments turned on this, so people would list the kinds of experimental techniques you might try to see if another object that looks like you has a mind like yours, and they're mostly language tests based on the creative aspect of language. Well, in order to deal with these apparent facts, and we have no reason to doubt that they're facts, in fact they seem to be facts, in order to deal with that, Descartes had a problem. You couldn't incorporate this within the mechanical philosophy, so it wasn't a matter of gears and levers and so on. So he was forced to invent a new principle, which is standard science, incidentally. If something isn't explained by the principles you have, you construct a new principle. The new principle is what he called the mind. So alongside of body, which works by mechanical principles, there's another principle, a kind of creative principle, has other properties too, which is mind. That's the famous Cartesian dualism. So the world consists of body and special human characteristic, mind, which distinguishes humans from animals and automata and turns on factors like these. And others, but primarily these. What was the fate of this doctrine? Here's where misunderstanding enters. The fate of this doctrine was, it should be clearly understood. It was overthrown within a generation by Isaac Newton. But what Newton showed was that the theory of body was wrong. He didn't have anything to say about the theory of mind. That stayed unchanged. Newton showed that the world just isn't a machine. It works by mystical forces. That was an appalling discovery. Newton considered it a total absurdity, and to the end of his life tried to overcome it, but it was apparently true. Namely, the force of attraction does not involve contact. So I can, unbelievable as it is, move the moon by lifting my arm. And that's just the way the world works. It has mystical forces. As I say, Newton was regarded this as a total absurdity. He was sharply condemned by the scientists of the day, the leading scientists of the day, for returning to neo-scholastic mysticism with occult forces, as they were called, that made the world work and showed that the world couldn't possibly be a machine. And these were unintelligible forces. We couldn't understand them. They were mysterious. I mean, common sense tells us that I can only make something move by touching it, by being in contact with it in some fashion. But Newtonian physics said, no, that's not true. There's an occult force that allows you to make things move, and that accounts for the terrestrial motion and planetary motion and the tides and so on and so forth. Well, as I say, this was considered a total absurdity, but was apparently true. And what it does is demolish the conception of body. It demolishes the idea that the world is a machine. It isn't. It has mystical forces. It's common these days to ridicule the Cartesian idea of the ghost in the machine. The mind's a ghost inside the machine, but that's misunderstanding. What was exorcised was the machine, not the ghost. The ghost stayed where it was. Turned out the world was not a machine. There are no machines in the sense of our common sense understanding and the mechanical philosophy, the physics of the day. So that goal was undermined. It turns out the world is indeed unintelligible to us. We have to accept the existence of mystical forces. We can try to develop an understanding of their principles and doctrines about them and so on, but they're not intelligible to human understanding, and the mind stays where it was. These ideas were more, this was, like I say, a kind of an outrageous discovery. Newton tried to overcome it to the end of his days. Well into the 20th century, physicists were still trying to construct some kind of mechanical conception of the universe. By now, that's finally been abandoned totally, and people are accustomed to even more mystical notions like, fields, which are mathematical objects, but still interact with one another, electromagnetic forces, conception of space and time which eliminates any notion of solidity or, in fact, all of common sense is just gone. It's not even considered relevant at this point. Yes, the world is unintelligible to our common sense, but that's just the way it is. We do the best we can in trying to construct doctrines about it. What we're left with, and this was reasonably well understood in the 18th century, is just that we can consider various aspects of the world. So we can consider its mechanical aspects and its electrical aspects and optical aspects and chemical aspects and mental aspects and so on. And we can try to study them and develop bodies of doctrine about them, and then we can try to unify these bodies of doctrine as best we can. But because we're hoping to find a kind of a unified interpretation of the world, not expecting to understand any of it, just, sort of, we understand it in some level, but not in the sense that was hoped for by Galileo and other scientists of the scientific revolution. And that's the best you can do. As far as thought is concerned, by the end of the 18th century, there were a fair number of people, well-known scientists like Joseph Priestley and others, who recognized that we just have to assume that just as matter has properties that we cannot comprehend, like attraction and repulsion, or electrical properties and so on, well, we also have to accept that certain arrangements of the parts of the brain produce thought. It's a property of the organic structure of the brain. And that was actually proposed by John Locke, but developed through the 18th century. And in fact, there is no alternative. There's no other way of thinking about it. It's kind of these days you find, best-selling books and articles and so on about, the astonishing hypothesis or the radical new idea that thought or consciousness or whatever are just products of the structure of the brain. Yeah, it's just what they understood in the 18th century, because there's no alternative. Since the concept of body and matter has disappeared, all that we can say is, well, whatever is in there is producing thought. One image used in the 18th century, late 18th century, was that the brain secretes thought the way the liver secretes bile. Neither was understood, but that's just what happens. You try to understand them as best you can. And you try to work towards unification. And that's not a trivial matter. So if you take the science that's closest to physics, namely chemistry, unification with physics was finally achieved, but very recently. In fact, it was achieved at roughly the time when I was driving my parents crazy with foul smells from the basement where I was mixing chemicals in my chemistry set. In the mid-1930s, they were unified. It's not that chemistry was reduced to physics. In fact, chemistry was proven to be irreducible to physics. Physics was wrong. Physics had to undergo a radical change, quantum theoretic revolution, at which point it was possible to unify it with an essentially unchanged chemistry. Prior to that, back as recent as the 1920s, Nobel Prize winners and other famous scientists were saying that chemistry is just a mode of calculation. It's a metaphysical twaddle to consider valence and the periodic table and Bohr's atom and so on having reality. They're just ways of calculating chemical reactions. Well, 10 years later, that was dismissed because physics changed and was unified with chemistry. And a conception of the two was achieved that made chemistry and physics part of the same thing, but not by reduction. Reduction is pretty rare in the history of science. Not, 20 years later, a good deal of biology was unified with chemistry, but that was a radically, and physics, but a radical transformation of physics. The same people were involved on this problem. And that's modern science as far as we understand it. Still not unified with the core of standard science is other aspects of the world, like the mental aspect. Figured out yet how to unify those with the rest of science. And nobody can tell, and we can only proceed as people proceeded for hundreds of years in chemistry, trying to construct a body of doctrine to account for the phenomena that you discover. And make as much sense out of it as you can, and look forward to some eventual unification, which may or may not take place, with other studies of other aspects of the world, and nobody can tell how that's going to happen. I mean, maybe it'll be necessary to radically change underlying physics in order to integrate it with what might turn out to be an unchanged theory of the mind. Nobody can know. Those are things you wait for to see. Well, this is not well understood, as I say, and in fact, in many ways, there's regression about these matters. If you look at the 17th and 18th century studies about whether machines can think, in many ways, they are more sophisticated than contemporary work about these matters. Well, the second cognitive revolution picked up, reinvented a lot of these ideas. Sometimes, and it opened up the way to quite productive inquiry in some areas, although some of the major gaps still remain. The cognitive revolution of the second one of the 1950s involved a radical shift of perspective as compared with structuralist and behaviorist and other prevalent approaches, which viewed, let's keep the language, but it's general for cognition, it viewed these behaviorist and structuralist approaches viewed language as action, as behavior, or as the products of behavior, like texts. That's language. The cognitive revolution introduced a change. It was concerned not with behavior or texts, but with inner mechanisms. That is, whatever the mechanisms are that are responsible for the behavior and the production of the texts and so on. So behavior just and texts and corpus of materials and so on, they just become data. Like what happens when you mix chemicals, just phenomena. They're of no interest in itself. They become of interest when they provide evidence for inner mechanisms, exactly as in chemistry. The phenomena themselves are dismissed, and the same with the behavior. If they provide evidence, fine. If they don't, throw it out. And there could be plenty of other kinds of evidence. There's nothing privileged about these kinds of evidence. Like you could get evidence someday from cellular biology or something else. What you're interested in is the inner mechanisms that account for what a person knows when they know a language, what it is that we roughly share, though not identical, of course. That's the shift of perspective in a whole range of fields, study of language, vision, motor coordination, and so on. In the course of that, there was a good deal of reinvention of traditional conceptions like those I mentioned. This approach was criticized at the time as being mentalist, which is correct. It was mentalist, meaning it was concerned with mental aspects of the world, and that's a move towards scientific naturalism. It's a move towards making the field of study chemistry or biology or whatever, because it's looking at the internal mechanisms and not at the phenomena which are now dismissed as essentially data unless they're useful for something. So the criticism was correct, but it wasn't criticism, it was praise, though it wasn't conceived of that way. So we now are interested consciously in mental aspects of the world, like chemical aspects, try to figure out what they are, to see if maybe someday it'll be possible to unify them with other kinds of inquiry. The approach was also what's sometimes called internalist. That is, it's concerned with, it takes language to be a state of the brain. So my language is some state of my brain. Your language is some state of your brain. Now, that's not the way we usually think of language in common sense. But common sense has centuries ago been dismissed as irrelevant to the effort to understand how the world works. That's the great discovery of the scientific revolution. The way we think about language is as some kind of abstract entity which is outside of us. So we say that people in Shanghai and Beijing speak Chinese. Chinese is a language spoken by those people. And we say that people in, on the other hand, we don't say, for example, that people in Rio de Janeiro and Bucharest speak the same language. We don't say that they both speak Romance. Why do we say that people in Shanghai and Beijing speak Chinese, but people in Rio and Bucharest don't speak Romance? Well, not for any linguistic reason. That has to do with colors on maps and the stability of empires and things like that. It doesn't have anything to do with the nature of the systems. In fact, language, the way we use it, is some very complicated socio-political notion which has not much to do with things that are in people's heads. Furthermore, it's a very obscure notion. So it has normative aspects and teleological aspects. So you're supposed to go to school to learn how to speak good English, or the right English, because you don't know that, or what's in your head somehow isn't the right English. That's somehow normative. That's part of our culture, but it has no scientific meaning. Sometimes, at least, a complete absurdity, as in the debate over Ebonics a year or two ago. In fact, as any scientist will understand, or anyone who uses their sense, if the people in East Oakland happen to have all the money and power, Ebonics would be good English, and what they talk at Princeton and Yale would be some weird kind of dialect or something like that. I mean, whatever these things are, they're not psychological or biological or linguistic notions. The teleological aspect is even more mystical. So, like, say, take a 3-year-old kid, Peter, let's say. What language is Peter speaking? Well, there's no answer to that question in ordinary usage. He's not speaking any language. Of course, he's got linguistic knowledge, understands all sorts of things and saying all kind of new things and so on. But that's not a language. I mean, it's certainly not English. In fact, what we say is Peter's on his way towards acquiring English. And so it's teleological. There's like an end point. And if under normal circumstances, he'll get there, but what he's talking is not a language at all. It's nothing. On the other hand, if, say, all children, all adults were to die, let's say, and all kids 3 years old were to survive somehow, then down the road, these 3-year-olds would be speaking, which is just one of the possible human languages, just as much as Japanese or Hungarian or anything else, except it wouldn't be English. It would be something sort of like English, but different, because it would have matured and developed in a different way. But we have no way of talking about those things in ordinary usage, which just means that ordinary usage has to be abandoned if we hope to understand the nature of these systems. If we hope to understand what human beings are like, we're going to pay attention to how to adopt an internalist approach and to look at states of the mind, states of the brain, we assume, which are the languages that people know. You and I can communicate to the extent that our internal states are more or less similar, but communication is a more or less affair. It's not a yes or no affair. When you listen to me, your linguistic faculties, that component of your brain, reflexively carries out sensory adaptations, so you can accommodate my own speech in terms of your somewhat different speech. That's all reflexive. You have no control over it. And you reflexively assign interpretations to what I'm saying. Sometimes it doesn't work, but over substantial range it does. Again, it's completely reflexive. There's no possible conscious control. Consciousness could enter. Like, for example, if you miss some words that I'm saying, you might consciously try to reconstruct what they might have been. But that's what communication is. It's a matter of sort of more or less, mostly reflexive, sometimes impossible, and there's nothing more to say about it. There's no such thing as English, the thing we all speak. To say that two people speak the same language, say that you and I speak English, is kind of like saying that two people live near one another. There's no right answer to whether they live near one another. Like if we're talking to somebody from Mars, we might say that you live near me in Boston. On the other hand, if we're asking if I could get here by bicycle, we'd say, no, we don't live near one another. There's no right answer to that. The world isn't divided into areas, and some people are in the same area and others are in different areas. And the story about language is about the same, except that the multidimensionality and complexity is far greater. Well, those are changes of orientation that have to be accepted and understood if one hopes to try to figure out what human beings are like. What are these? What's the nature of these properties? And so there's no contradiction at all between taking this internalist point of view and being interested in questions of the use of language in power relations or for domination or for unifying people or whatever socio-linguistic concerns. These are
that's what's up, bro.
mutually
Appreciate
supportive enterprises. Just as if you're studying bees, let's say, you can study bee communities and you can study the
Appreciate the
nature of
love,
bees,
homie.
and those are not in conflict. In fact, they're mutually supportive. If you want to understand bee communities, if you're curious about it, you want to ask what are bees like, what's their internal nature. And the same is true if you want to understand human communities, the various complicated kinds of human communities and the way language enters into them. That relies crucially on whatever understanding we have about the internal nature of humans. I mention this because although this is taken for granted in the study of bees, it's considered highly controversial, if not outrageous, in the study of humans, which is one aspect of the general irrationality with which human affairs are studied. Why that's true, we could ask, but it's definitely true. If we're rational about it, there's no conflict whatsoever. What do we find when we try to look at humans the way we would look at chemical elements or anything else in the natural world, looking at their linguistic aspects? The first thing we discover, which is already obvious centuries ago, is that language is apparently a species property. It's something specific to humans. It has very little variation within the species. So aside from really extreme pathology, humans are basically identical in their language faculties. You're not genetically determined to learn Chinese or English or anything like that. We just have the same language faculties. And it's also biologically quite isolated as far as anyone knows. There are no cousins. There's not only no variation within the species, but there's no similar organisms. You have to go quite far to find even superficial similarities. Maybe the closest similarities are actually with insects, with bees. So bees have a complicated, every organism has some kind of communication system, but the bee communication system, I should say its phenomenal character is very well understood, it's very well described, but nobody has any idea how it works. The physiology isn't understood. Nobody would even dream of talking about the evolution of it. It's way too complex. The bees are a lot simpler than we are, but these things are not understood for bees and surely not for humans. In any event, the bee communication system has some of the properties of human language. For example, one striking property of human language is what's sometimes called displaced reference. I can talk to you about the arrangement of books in my study in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and you can understand me. We're talking about things that aren't in our sensory field, right? So that's displaced reference. That's normal human behavior. It's also normal bee behavior. So bees, when they do their dance, are communicating to other bees about something remote that's not in their sensory field, like a flower and where it is and what kind of a flower it is and how much honey you can get from it and so on and so forth. That property, displaced reference, is extremely rare in the animal world. In fact, it's really known only in bees and humans. There have been attempts to artificially impose it on other primates like apes. And there's some anecdotal evidence that maybe this is possible, but nothing you could call scientific evidence. In any event, it's certainly not the normal communicative behavior, as far as we know at least, of organisms other than humans and insects. No evolutionary connection, like there's a distance of, I don't know, a billion years or something. You can find vocal learning in other organisms. Songbirds are the only known organism that has vocal learning, but it's evolved independently in several species of songbirds and in different ways. For some of them it's kind of like a fixed pattern, for others it adapts to the vocal environment and so on. It would be completely senseless to study the language, if the song of one species by looking at the song of another species that evolved separately. That'll teach you nothing. And even more madly senseless to try to study human language by comparing it to things like this. There is a lot of kind of sentimental interest in relating and trying to show that other primates like gorillas or chimpanzees and so on can have some of the superficial properties of humans. I mean, I don't know what the scientific interest of this is, probably nil, but probably the worst way to study intelligence of primates. But there's a lot of work on that. And you'll read anecdotal stories about it and some scientific evidence, in fact. But it's totally misunderstood. I mean, if you could show that some other primate had properties like human language, that would not be a challenge to the study of language at all. In fact, it wouldn't affect the study of human language at all. It would affect general biology. It would be a biological miracle, in fact. It would be a major challenge to the theory of evolution. And therefore one wants strong evidence for it before you challenge a well-established theory like the theory of evolution. You really want strong evidence. But this has almost nothing to do, it has no more to do with the study of human language than if you could demonstrate that humans could really fly. It's just that nobody had thought to teach them of the right way of moving their arms around or something. I mean, if you found that out, it wouldn't affect the study of eagle flight. That would continue exactly the way it does, but it would challenge the theory of evolution radically. I mean, how come humans had this amazing capacity with its enormous selectional advantages and never thought of using it until some Martian came along or something? So that would be pretty strange, but it has nothing to do with the theory of eagle flight, and the study of primate communication has nothing to do with the study of human language. It tells you nothing. As far as we understand these, so again, this is a species-specific characteristic, which furthermore evolved extremely recently. It seems to have evolved, as far as anybody knows, in maybe 100,000 years or so, which is like the flick of an eye from the point of view of evolution, and about at a distance of roughly 15 million years, double the point of separation from other primates. That just seems to be a fact about it. And there's no analogies in other organisms, and certainly no homologous structures that anyone knows about, and no variation within the species, which makes the study of human evolution seem evolution of the capacity seem extremely difficult. Most serious evolutionary biologists consider it to be impossible because the kinds of evidence that would be relevant are just not present, like related species or variation in the species and so on. At the moment, there is no serious reason to doubt the Cartesian assumption that the ability, I'm quoting Descartes, the ability to use language to express freely formed thoughts is the true difference between man and animal, or between man and automaton, and that's true whether you're talking about the automata of the 17th century or today's automata, computers and so on. The problems are the same. Nothing changes. So take a modern computer, it's no different in these respects from an old-fashioned clock. Other respects, but not these. The faculty of language also has structural properties that are biologically isolated as far as we know. They don't appear elsewhere in the organic world. The most elementary of them, the most simple, is what's called discrete infinity. It's a property that's illustrated most strikingly in the natural numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4 of those. There aren't any numbers in between 3 and 4. There's other numbers, but not integers, not natural numbers. And they go on indefinitely, so there's no biggest number. These are things that children know somehow. They can't learn them. There's no way for a child to learn things like this. If you don't already know it, you can't learn it. No amount of experience could tell you that, if you've heard the numbers up to 7, that there's going to be another one, or up to 9 zillion, that there's going to be another one. That's just something you have to know, and it's a way it's like the Cartesian story about triangles. It's got to come from inside. And as far as we know, no other organism has that capacity, or the similar capacity that shows up in language. So somehow a child knows that there can be 3-word sentences and 4-word sentences, but no 3.5-word sentences, and it goes on indefinitely. You can always make up more complicated ones without limit, and they do. In fact, that's standard for very young children. So all of this stuff somehow comes from inside. It's an expression of the genes, we now assume. When you move to less elementary properties than this, the conclusions just become more striking. You find all sorts of properties of language that just seem to have no analog, let alone homologous organs elsewhere in the biological world. and again, very recent as far as we know. Well, take this kid, Peter again. Imagine that Peter's an infant, say, just born, and has a pet kitten and a pet chimpanzee or whatever you like. They're going to go along certain courses of growth and development, which are partially similar and partially different. So in matters like, say, spatial orientation, like what does an infant or a kitten do when you disorient it in space? What kind of cues does it use to reorient? Very complicated thing. Turns out that kittens and infants are about the same. They do it pretty much the same ways. On the other hand, interpreting the linguistic signals that go on, they do it in totally different ways. In fact, the kitten and the chimpanzee and so on don't do it at all. But the infant just does it reflexively and very early. In fact, probably it's probably intrauterine. As early as you can do it, the experimental techniques are getting better and better, and as you do experiments with younger and younger infants, it turns out they already know almost anything you can test. It's already been shown that with infants just a couple of days old, they can distinguish the language of their mother from other languages. And it happens in very strange ways when you start comparing the languages that they identify and don't identify. So something's going on pre-birth, which is already setting the language faculty in motion and in specific ways. By the time the infant's a couple of months old, long before it's producing anything, it's already got the main intonational structure of the language fixed, knows whether it's Polish or Japanese and so on, and a little later all sorts of other things. Well before children are talking more than, let's say, one word or two words, they're understanding quite complex sentences, and you can show that experimentally. They can even determine the meaning of nonsense words from complex utterances and so on. And all of this stuff is just happening. It's not anything the child is learning any more than the child is learning to have arms and legs. It's just a form of growth. Some kind of growth of this faculty is taking place, like the visual system is growing and you're getting binocular vision and learning motor coordination, what we call learning, acquiring motor coordination and so on. These are apparently just things that happen to a child and don't happen to other organisms that have the same experience, like the child's pet chimpanzee. The faculty of language is somehow identifying linguistic experience, linguistic phenomena, as a separate category of phenomena. And that's not so easy. Nobody knows how to construct a computer program that'll do this. But somehow children are picking out the linguistic phenomena from the whole mass of junk that's going on, and operating on those phenomena in a highly specific fashion, using properties like those I mentioned and much more complicated ones. And again, all of that sounds, it looks as if it's biologically isolated and common to the species. There's some variation. So English isn't Swahili. But the variation has got to be superficial because the states that are attained are so intricate and special and highly articulated as compared with the data available that there's no way it could be a reflection of the data available. It's just got to come from the inside, from which you expect, and one of the tasks of study is to try to prove that English and Swahili are really virtually identical. If some Martian was looking at humans, we'd regard them as minor variations on the same system. Just the way we regard differences among rats as minor differences. You don't really care about them, they're all rats. We know from that other components of the mind and brain also undergo some variation. So you can show experimentally that the visual system takes somewhat different forms, sometimes pretty radically different forms, as a result of minor changes in early experience. This can be shown with cats and monkeys and other organisms that people allow themselves to experiment with. And since the human visual system is pretty much like the general mammalian visual system, it's assumed that the same is true of the human visual system. In the case of language, those differences are what we call different languages, but they've got to be mostly the same structure and character and semantics and so on, with minor variations. And one of the major tasks of the contemporary study of language is to try to prove that. We have good reason to believe it must be true. And much work is devoted to trying to show that if you make little changes in the fundamental properties of language, you get superficially different systems, but all sort of cast to the same mold. That's been one of the major research topics, particularly the last 10 or 15 years, and it's made quite substantial progress in typologically quite different languages. Well, if there were time, which there isn't, I would try to give some illustrations of the kinds of things that extremely young children know, which go way beyond any kind of evidence they have. There's no doubt that this is true, and it leaves us with no alternative but to assume that somehow these systems grow out of our nature. There's an initial state of the language faculty, which is just some expression of the genes, and from then a process of growth and maturation takes place, obviously influenced by the environment, but that's true of every other system too, and it leads to the mature state of the language faculty that we all have. That's true not just of complicated sentences, not particularly 5-word sentences are enough to illustrate the intricacy of these things. It's also true of individual words. So if you just think of the simplest part of language, the meaning of words, it turns out that these two are constructions of the mind, not reflections of experience, very much in the way that Descartes thought. Actually, this is another topic that was studied rather intensively in the 17th and 18th century in ways which are only beginning to be rediscovered today. So take, say, the Mississippi River, concept river, which every young child understands. Thomas Hobbes, already 350 years ago, recognized that this is a very complicated concept. How do we know that something is the same river? What makes something a river? Why is the Mississippi a river? What changes in the Mississippi would make it a different river? Well, Hobbes thought about this, and he recognized that it wasn't the stuff that's in it. The stuff that's in it could be 95% chemical pollutants, and probably is, but it would still be the Mississippi River, even though it's not water anymore, it's some other thing flowing down it. And he also recognized that you could change the course of the river artificially, like you could make it go somewhere else, but it would still be the Mississippi River. And he concluded that what makes something a river is its origin. So it has to have the same origin, and then all sorts of radical changes can take place, but it's still a river. Well, that's a mental construction. That's not like the earth sciences have no such concept. But if you think about it a little more, it's way more complicated than that. I mean, it can't be the origin. For example, you can reverse the course of a river, and it can be the same river. One of the great engineering projects attempted in Russia was to reverse the course of the Volga. Well, suppose it had succeeded. It still would have been the Volga. It just would have been going in the opposite direction. It would still be the same river. Or you could take the Mississippi and separate it into different streams, and make them come together somewhere else where they never had before. And although it was separate things along its course, under a variety of conditions, it would still be the Mississippi River, despite those changes. So you can change in fact, you could change the point of origin and have the spring, things it comes from start somewhere else and could still be the Mississippi River. There's a wide variety of variations under which it would still be the same river. On the other hand, not all variations. In fact, some very slight variations would turn it into something else. So, like, suppose there was an ice age and the Mississippi froze, it was all ice, still the same contents, maybe pure H2O. And suppose you sort of put some chemical over the top that prevented cars from skidding on it, and you used it as a highway. So it was the highway to get from wherever it goes to. Well, it wouldn't be a river anymore. Now it would be a road. I mean, it's from the physicist's point of view, it's identical, essentially, to what it was before, but it's not a river. It's a road for humans. And you can proceed with that. Whatever the concept river is that every young child knows is extremely intricate. And no child has any evidence about these things. Like no one, and you don't find it in dictionaries. For example, if you look up the word river in a dictionary, it doesn't tell you any of these things quite correctly, because these are all things that come from our nature. It would be a dictionary to tell you about them, even if they knew about them, which they don't. But these are research topics, really. But what a dictionary does is give you hints. It gives you a few hints that you can then use to make your innate capacities and innate mental structures construct the concept out of its own nature. And that's true of every word in the language. The words, our words and our concepts are what David Hume called fictitious constructions. That is, constructions of our imagination on the occasion of sense. That's why they're the same for all languages. So if we were talking Japanese, I could have given the same examples, and you could be certain that they would work, because they're independent of experience. They just come from our inner nature. Now, every word you think about is like this. So take, say, the word book. Suppose the library has 2 copies of, say, Joyce's Ulysses, and Peter takes one and Tom takes another. Did they take the same book, or did they take different books? Well, it depends on how you're thinking about it. From one point of view, they took out the same book, namely Joyce's Ulysses. From another point of view, they took out different books, 2 different physical objects. You can take the abstract and material point of view. These are points noticed already by Aristotle, I should say. You can take the you can take both perspectives simultaneously. So you can say John took out Ulysses and memorized it, and Bill took it out and burned it. Okay. Notice that I'm referring to it by the pronoun it. Well, what's it referring to? Well, it's referring to an abstract object. That's what the first guy, I forget his name, memorized. And a physical object, that's what the second guy burned. Suppose I say John's book is in every bookstore in the country. Well, is it one thing or many things? Well, it's one thing. He has one book. It's the only book he ever wrote. On the other hand, it's many things, because you can find it in Chicago and New York and so on and so forth. And that's just what a book is. It's some really weird object, which is both material and immaterial, abstract and concrete, a lot of places and one place and so on. These are things that everyone knows about the word, but without any experience or instruction or looking it up in a dictionary or anything like that. In fact, again, you don't find any such things in dictionaries. Well, these are the topics these are the most elementary cases. As soon as you begin to look at, I'll just give one example of a slightly more complex case to illustrate. Suppose I say that, suppose there's a chicken over there, and I say the chicken's ready to eat. Okay. Well, that's ambiguous. It can mean the chicken is getting prepared to, pick up a piece of corn or whatever it is chickens eat. Or it could mean that we're ready to eat the chicken. Okay, so the chicken is properly cooked. Chicken's ready to eat. Suppose I say that the chicken is ready to be eaten. Okay, well, it's still ambiguous, but if you think about it carefully, it's ambiguous in different ways. I mean, it could mean the chicken is ready. It's, it realizes it's going to be eaten and it's ready, like the man getting, prepared to be, he's ready to be executed, the guy on death row. Could mean that, or it could mean that the chicken is properly prepared to be eaten. So it has an ambiguity, but I'll leave it as an exercise. If you think it through, it's a different ambiguity from the first one. Suppose I replace the word ready by hard, let's say. I say the chicken is hard to eat. Well, it loses the ambiguity. Now it just means one thing. It's hard for us to eat the chicken. Suppose I take the second sentence and replace ready by hard. The chicken is ready to be eaten. The chicken is hard to be eaten. That doesn't mean anything. For some reason, that just doesn't work. Whatever the principles of our language